Celebrating Pride 365. This is KIIS FM's Pride Zoom Table. Thanks to Bud Light. Now, here's your host, Raph.
Welcome to our KIIS FM Pride Zoom Table. My name is Raph. We partnered with LA Pride, and we're celebrating Pride not just in June, but all year long because, you know, Pride is 365. And it's so nice to have a special guest here today. His name is Curly Velasquez. You probably heard of him. Curly, what's up, man?
Woo! Sorry, I live in the heart of LA, so as you started talking, a bunch of sirens started going by, and I was like, "That's right. That's the sound of the land around here."
Pressing the buttons, yeah. The sound of LA, sound of La La Land, right? Of course, we got to thank our sponsors, of course, Bud Light Seltzer, KIIS FM's Pride Month sponsor, giving a $1 donation to GLAAD for every Bud Light's Pride pack that is purchased. Pride Month, man, it's amazing. We get to celebrate this. I mean, not just in June, obviously, but all year round. And obviously, what does Pride mean to you? Oh, you're mute.
I muted myself so that you couldn't hear the sirens while you were talking, and then
is that what it was? Was that loud?
It was like, yeah, it was like really loud over here. I mean, look, Pride is a lot of things to me. Pride is like, I think to me, it's very much a privilege that is not afforded to many of our queer family members in the world. It's something that's very new. I feel like in the context of like history, you know, it's also something that was pushed into the forefront predominantly by Black and brown queer people. So it's not really like what people imagine, like, whoa, like the beads and the color and all this. And it's really cool. But to me, Pride is like, man, it was a lot of people really putting their life on the line and really pushing for big change and being radical with their own expression of who they are. So now I recognize that, like, I always tell people it's if you feel safe to do it, if you feel safe coming out, if you feel safe engaging in Pride Month, like, consider yourself very lucky and do it. And there's a whole nother world out here ready to, a whole other world of shady ass queens that are ready to listen to you and, you know, enjoy and grow with you in life. And so, yeah, so Pride is it's a lot. It's kind of like a big thing for sure.
It's a big celebration as well. Let's talk about you, man, because you are LA born and raised. You were talking to us off the camera. You're like, oh my God, I listen to KIIS FM all the time. Like, we're in LA. Where you born and raised?
I am from Hollywood, literally from Melrose and Vine area. I went to school at the end of Vine. There is like a church that I like got baptized at and went to school right next to that church. My grandmother came over from El Salvador in the 80s because of a lot of conflict and poverty. And so she came over, and literally my entire Salvadorian undocumented family settled in Hollywood of all places. And so that's where I'm from. I started years later, like I've had like quite the journey. But even when I ended up working at BuzzFeed, which is like kind of like how I got to be where I'm at today, right. They were also on Vine. And so I literally always talk about how my entire life, literally like my memoir, can you hear the sirens now?
I can hear it. They're calling for you.
Good. I want you to hear those sirens. I want you to know.
Oh my goodness.
So my literal life has been like up and down Vine Street. I think my memoir should just be called Vine. Like, it has, Hollywood cracks me up because it has always been the way that it is now. It's gotten a little worse. But my favorite thing is when people come and they're like, oh my God, Hollywood is really gross and grimy. I'm like, I know. Now go back home. You know what I mean? Like,
that's where I live. That's where I grew up.
I know. That's literally where like I was exposed to a lot of different things that maybe little kids shouldn't see early on. Mm-hmm. But it kind of adds, as a writer, as a creator, and as somebody who like wants to kind of tell stories about
definitely
Angelinos, like seeing those things when I saw them kind of adds to a little bit of the flavor. But you're wearing an LA hat. Are you from LA too, or?
Actually, no, I'm a transplant. So I mean, I've been here a couple years now. So I'm from the East Coast.
So I have so much love for the East Coast. Where on the East Coast?
New York, actually, from New York. Grew up in like.
I love New York. It's so funny because like back in the day, like I feel like New Yorkers and Angelinos, like there's like this weird beef. And what I realized is that it's beef that was started by people who aren't from either one.
Yeah.
Like, like somebody who like lived in New York for 6 years or something and then came to LA and they're like, oh, New York is so much better. They're gonna, like, I meet New Yorkers, like proper New Yorkers, and I'm like, y'all are fucking, like, y'all are dope. Like, y'all are so cool, especially in crowded, like when we're in crowded spaces in LA, all my New Yorker friends, where do you want to go? You need to get to the Cheesecake Factory in 2 seconds. Let's do it. They walk, they move, they know how to do it. They're not like, I'm out here being like, excuse me, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I just get right there? Thank you so much. How are you today? And like, it takes me 45 minutes to get anywhere, but my New Yorker friends are like on it.
I'm getting used to the traffic here now and being like, all right, it's gonna take me an hour, to get from like Burbank to Glendale, so it's fine. Like,
yes. I also just love like, okay, so when I always cry when I'm in New York. By the way, I always get there, my phone dies. I don't understand how to navigate while being underground. I don't know how to get anywhere. I don't understand boroughs. I'm constantly like, wait, am I in Manhattan or am I not in Manhattan?
I mean, like, it's like me though, like being in LA, I'm like, LA's huge. So I'm like going from like, one town to another, but it's like, oh, LA stretches all the way like to the San Fernando Valley and it goes all the way down to Long Beach. Like, that's LA. I'm like, I thought it's like, the 5 buildings in the middle there with the tall skyscrapers.
Yeah,
like,
you're thinking downtown LA, which is really funny because I feel like there's certain areas and neighborhoods in LA County that we give each other credit. Like, okay, where are you from? Oh, you're from there. Okay, fine, you're from LA. Where are you from? Oh, you're from the end. Like, if you tell me someone is like, okay, I'm from like Pico Rivera, I would be like, okay, like I'll give you the LA thing. But if you're like from Burbank, which is way closer, I would be like, you want to rep LA, but you're actually from Burbank, Like,
it's definitely like, little, give and take for the towns and the cities.
Yeah, my family moved us to Burbank in the mid 2000s. And it was such a culture shock for me because I didn't understand suburbia in that way. I didn't understand people saying good morning and how are you and actually mean it, like actually be waiting for an answer. In Hollywood, you keep your eyes down, you don't make eye contact with anybody in the streets and you get to where you need to go,
Oh my goodness. Look, dude, let's talk about your like career now though. You're like, growing up in LA, you've learned to do fashion, you've gone into BuzzFeed doing like videos as a lead creator for Pero Like that. Dude, I watched a couple of those videos. I'm like, how do these grandmas not like get at each other, these abuelas, like about tamales? I'm like, dude, how did you find these people like to do these videos? You call like your cousins or like?
In the beginning. So I basically worked in fashion for a long time. That was my dream. That was my goal. And then with the recession of 2008, I had to like really figure out what I was going to do. So I ended up at the kitchen I was hired as a receptionist at BuzzFeed, but they didn't have phones at the time. So my manager was like, well, just fix the kitchen, like just hang out in the kitchen. So we had like a canteen, like a cantina, I guess, I don't know what we would call it. And I would stock the snacks, I would stock the refrigerators, I'd fix the teas, and I would serve the lunches. And I basically would be there with like my little trapo, like my little rag. And I was doing this for kids who were like their first time out of college. Like this was their first job out of college. They were like, I'm here out of college, I'm making videos. And I'm like, I've had a whole ass, like I was 26. I was like, I've had a whole ass like career. And this is kind of like where I'm at right now to pay my bills. But sure, let me get you like 16 pizzas to make a video or whatever.
Right.
I ended up doing videos where I just speak my mind. I don't call myself a funny person. I don't think I'm funny. I think I just have a weird look and I have a weird way of looking at things. And I also have a weird cadence when I speak, like it's kind of really bouncy. And so I think that people I became kind of memorable. And I started to kind of become one of the it personalities at BuzzFeed while I was still serving their lunches in the kitchen. So I would like basically work my way up. So I ended up getting moved out of the kitchen. I started a lunch show while I was in the kitchen, and I would get on my skateboard and I would skate around and I would basically introduce what we were going to eat that day. And people I think were like, he's too crazy. He's too like wild to be serving us food. Like we need to put him in more videos. So I ended up working my way up into the Latino team. I was the last addition to this team. I was kind of like an afterthought. They were like, well, what about early.
Like
so
the last guy in like getting dodgeball, like you're like,
yes,
we're fine.
Yes, exactly. I like that actually.
But I mean, like, dude, like, look at you now. So, you know.
Exactly. So I get added, I go in there. I actually remember the first week being like, I'm not going to get too comfortable because I think I'm going to go back to the other teams they wanted me to be on. And everybody was like, no, like, you're going to be here. So, like, to answer your question, in the early days, the way that we would find these women is we would call our tias, our aunties, we would call our uncles, we would call our cousins. We basically called upon our family members and our friends to be like, hey, can you do this video for us? Can you come in? Can you try this? Which made it really cool. One of my favorite things about what we did early on was that we understood that stereotypes as far as culture goes on the internet, people click, people want to see it. Like, I don't care what anybody says. You see a hot Cheeto thing, people are like, oh my God, people want to click, right? But what we wanted to do was, how do we create content that is meaningful, that pushes the narrative forward, that is not just kind of highlighting the hegemony of Mexican culture within the Latin space, right? That's like a fancy word that one of my scholar friends taught me that I like was like, what the?
Very, very collegiate.
But here's the thing, I will always be that kid from the kitchen and I'm being pushed into these different spaces and I'm like, what does that mean? Why are you gonna say hegemony? And then you know what I mean? Like, but it's been really dope. We constantly see backlash from people who don't know the scope of our work. They think that, you know, we have perpetuated stereotypes and they don't understand all the work that we've done to push back on that. So it's definitely been a really cool ride and a really cool thing to be able to highlight and showcase different parts of our community that oftentimes get forgotten. Like,
and I totally get it because like I'm Filipino, so like when I see stuff like that on BuzzFeed about like, you know, someone tries balut, you know, like some like egg with a duck inside of it, you're like, I totally tried that and it relates to me.
I don't know if you saw that, but I was in that video.
You were in that video? Oh my goodness.
Well, I grew up with a lot of Filipino kids, which is really dope because I actually I will eat anything. Like I love dinuguan, I love pancit, I love like
oh my goodness.
adobo. I actually taught myself how to make adobo because I was like, I can't wait for Tita to make it. I have to learn myself. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, what'd you think about the Filipino food? Like, you tried all the food. You're like,
oh, I love it. There's actually a restaurant out here which I'll pull up on my phone that I love. That is so good. They like. I just love it. I grew up with it. And I feel very fortunate to grow up in Hollywood. And that's kind of an interesting thing too, because I grew up in Hollywood, I grew up with a lot of kids who were kind of like first generation or second generation Americans. So no matter where they look, what they look like or where they came from, we all would go to each other's houses and they also had a mom that was yelling at them in a different language. Yes. They also had food that they were kind of embarrassed about. Like, you know,
like your mom yelling at you, making your bed in Spanish. And I'm like, you know, I totally get that. My mom would do that in Tagalog all the time.
Yes. But like, I remember like, for example, for us, we have like something called like sopa de pata, which is literally like cow foot soup. And they put tripe and they put all these things. And I get so embarrassed. It's one of my favorite things to eat. But like when, you know, when people would come over, I'd be like, oh my God, we're eating this really weird thing. It's called foot soup and there's a whole ass foot in the soup. But then, you know, you go to your Filipino friends' houses and they have like the giant lechon on the table. They have like the dinuguan, which is like the liver and you're like, this is bomb. This is good.
Like try bringing it to school back in like, you know, middle and high school. Your mom would pack you a lunch and be like, what do you have for lunch? Peanut butter and jelly? No, I got dinuguan. It's like big blood or pork blood.
Exactly. I mean, look, as you're right, as kids, like you're like, oh, I just wanted Lunchables. All the kids that had the pizza Lunchables, I was like, please, Mom, I just normal.
Oh my God, that's so funny. And it's
as an adult, I love so much that I can really move into different spaces and kind of, you know, like when I go into Filipino households and I grab the elder's hand and I put it on my forehead, like
yes,
that fact that people know that, that I would know that is really, it means a lot to me because it says a lot about where I grew up in my own culture as being an Angelino, right? And even just like, if you come to our house, like, you know, we were to be like, whatever you do, don't touch the fridge. Just don't, they have to open it for you.
Right, yeah. Or else you get the chanclas, you get the chinelas in the Philippines.
Exactly. Like, I think for me, the chancla's not even worth it. Like if a mom or any of the women in the family give you the side eye, it's over. It's done. There's no.
It's so funny how we just know. We just have that like same vibe. We're like, all right, we know what's going on.
I had a friend that was an American who, like, I don't mean we're all Americans, but I mean like who was generations worth of American, right? And she came to the house and she opened up our fridge, and my mom was so like, she told my dad, like, oh my God, he brought a friend over. She opened the fridge. Can you believe it? She didn't even say hi when she walked into the house. She was so rude. Like, but you know, it's very much a part of our tradition, which is really cool. So I get excited to showcase that. I get excited to talk about that on the internet, to talk about those tender moments that are very unique to our families, but also so universal at the same time, right? Like, we all know what it's like to be yelled at by a mom who's disappointed in her life choices.
Exactly. And what do you have in mind now? Like, what do you have planned? Anything? Any new projects coming out for you and BuzzFeed, or on your own, or side hustles?
So I haven't. We're still in negotiations as far as like what's gonna happen with me and BuzzFeed, and we have a beautiful relationship. BuzzFeed is the place that gave me the platform that I have today, and I truly. I went sober so that I could focus and stay at BuzzFeed.
Awesome.
So I always tell people, like, BuzzFeed saved my life. Like, literally and figuratively, it saved my life. You know, I went from a kid who literally was engaging in drinking a lot, attempting to do sex work, and doing a lot of drugs. And by the time I got to BuzzFeed, they gave me a reason to want to do better and live a more full and complete life. Not saying that people that do that don't do that, but it was just like, it's more of like where I wanted to go with my life.
Yeah.
Because sex work is work, and people engage in a lot of different things to live, right? So the other thing too is like, as far as what I want to do is I want to continue to push the narrative on what is expected of people of color when it comes to telling our stories in entertainment, outside of trauma, outside of tropes, stereotypes, outside of like the regular, like, mi mama came from a faraway country and settled in Los Angeles. Like, I want to be like, I'm Salvadorian, I'm queer, and I just went on the worst day ever. Like, I want to make content that is like, we've all been on really bad dates. Tell me all about it, and not stay so fixated on like, you know, and then we had our frijoles and queso and tortilla, which we do. And I will incorporate that.
Yeah. Universal truth, yeah.
You know, I just went to this like big Latino Hollywood event, and I had crazy anxiety, as people always do when they come to these events. And I was like, oh man, like, what do I wear? Am I going to be on the list? Like, what's going to be the big thing? And I had this I was overcome with this beautiful emotion and feeling of knowing that no matter what the world thought of me out there, I was always going to be able to come home to my mom, who literally was making me frijoles with tortillas a mano, with some like cheese. And I was like, I think this is what it's about. Like, the love and the culture and the family. So that's all that I want to do in the future.
And we love that you're sharing it with the world on, you know, all these platforms on the internet.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm gonna watch all your videos now. I'm gonna watch that bullet video so I can find you.
Oh my God, I transform so much in all my videos, and sometimes I say things that I'm like, did I say that? Like, you know, it's really interesting to grow up on the internet and to really think out loud on the internet, which is what happens. So if you watch it, I'm sure I didn't say anything crazy, but I didn't do
You're fine. Curly Velasquez, of course, thank you so much for joining us. Our KIIS Pride Zoom table. Thanks to our sponsor, Bud Light Seltzer. They are giving a $1 donation, by the way, to GLAD for every Bud Light Pride pack that is purchased. Dude, Curly, what's your socials? Hit them up at the Curly V Show, right? That's what it is?
Yes, the Curly V Show on Instagram and on YouTube and on TikTok.
Yeah, I got to watch all those videos now. You and your abuela are so cute, by the way. I love it.
Much. Thank you. I appreciate you so much, Rap.
Yeah, thank you so much. Curly, talk to you.
All righty, cuida.